The following podcast contains coarse language and subject matter that people might find disturbing. Listener discretion is advised. The war inside your head is strong. It pulls you to the left and to the right, to the light and to the dark. You feel as though the ground beneath you will crumble, and the air is too thick to fly. But the voices in your head keep calling, and you're just not sure why. You scream to drown them out. You've tried so many times, but nothing you do invites the silence. And eventually, you must surrender. Welcome to the world beyond the veil. This is Geist. Susan is a messenger. She realized that she's able to relay messages from those that have passed on. And although modest about her skill, she's been able to ease broken hearts, fearful minds, and restless spirits.
Well, I guess I can't even remember how long ago it was, but I was very young, and I always felt that there was always something around me, and especially at night when it was really quiet, I would see shadows, and they would walk past my door. Somebody would come to the bottom of my bed, that kind of thing. And when you're little, you don't really know what it is. You just kind of feel a little bit frightened in a way. I was a proponent of Halloween. It's one of my favorite days, and I don't think there's been a Halloween that I haven't dressed up as a witch. So that's kind of ironic, I think. And I know that when we used to go up to our cottage in the middle of the night, I would always, you'd have to go to the washroom. I would not want to get out of bed. I would be absolutely terrified because I would hear or see things in the corner of my eye, and that, you never really knew quite what it was. It was almost like I could predict something. I would know that something was happening, and there would be some kind of message that somebody needed to have. And I always pushed it away because I didn't really want people to think that I was strange or crazy. And so I never really addressed any of that.
She has often wondered if a near-death experience when she was young triggered it all.
A near drowning when I was 13. And I don't know if that has anything to do with it or not, but I was swimming by myself, and it was a dog actually that almost drowned me. It wasn't the dog because the dog was a terrible dog, or it was just playing with me. It didn't really know that it was pushing me deeper and deeper. I went down, and I remember looking up, and I could see a really bright light, and I had this warm sensation come over me. And I could see this beautiful light. I felt warm, and it was in the middle of Lake Simcoe, which is very, very cold. All of a sudden, I felt like somebody pushed me right out of the water and over like somewhere shallower, and I started, coughing, and I was breathing. But I was absolutely terrified until I felt that warmth come over me. But it wasn't my time, I guess. And I ended up getting out of the water, and, I think I learned never to swim alone. I remember them, everybody's always telling you never swim alone. Well, it was probably smart. So after that, I started really seeing things a lot more. I started feeling a lot more, and I started, there was some really crazy experiences that happened to me.
Susan finds her messages are delivered to her in a specific way.
So I often get visitations at night, and I find that people will come to me because in the middle of the night, you're relaxed, you're trying to sleep, and that's when people try to give me a message. And I don't know when I'm going to get a message. I don't know who it's going to be about. And often people will ask me, well, do you see when I'm going to die? Do you see, did my mom come to you? Did this person come to you? I'm like, it's random. I can't make it happen. It's not going to happen. It will just be, it's hard to say how these things connect. And often these things happen in 2 weeks. For 2 weeks, I get the stronger and more information, and it just keeps happening until I finally gave the message. And then this time around 3 and 3:30, I would always wake up, and there's always something that happens, whether it's something turns on or I feel that somebody is touching me or something like that. There's always something that's happened, so I don't sleep very well.
She did get some insight as to where her gift may have originated.
But when my mom was really sick with cancer, I was around 18, and she had terminal cancer. It was what I guess they would call stage 4. She was very sick, and so I was sleeping in the bed with her downstairs, and I had never slept in that room before. But in this house, I remember sleeping in the bed with my mom, and about 11 o'clock at night, somebody like almost standing over me, and then the sheet was turned down. It's not just it felt like the sheet turned down, it actually turned down. I was so scared because I thought somebody was standing there. They were going to yank me out of bed or something. And it wasn't that at all. It was just a very gentle and kind of nice little turn down the bed. So in the morning, I said to my Mom, the weirdest thing happened to me. It was like somebody turned the bed down. The sheet turned down. And she said, oh yeah, that's just the chambermaid. She comes around 11 o'clock every night. That was the first time when I was 18 that my mom ever said anything about like knowing about spirits.
Messages didn't always come in a delicate form.
The first time that I stayed over with my now husband, so I'm trying to sleep in his house, and all of a sudden I had this feeling that this shadow person was over top of me, but it was very angry, and I couldn't understand what was going on. So I was really kind of fearful. I was very afraid. I've never slept in his house before. So what I did was I woke him up, turned all the lights on, and I explained to him that you cannot go to sleep until I've fallen asleep first, or otherwise I'm going home. I can't sleep here because you're going to call me crazy, but there's something in your room that is not happy. When we woke up, he was like, what was that about? And I said, I have a message for you from the man who used to own the house. And he said to me, well, there wasn't a man who owned the house. I bought them off of this couple. They had kids. And I said, no, must have been the guy before them. He doesn't like how you've staged your bedroom. And he said to me, what are you talking about? And I said, he doesn't like your bed against the window. He wants you to move the bed over here. And he wants to sit by the window like he always did in the morning. And I said, I don't know if you've ever smelled toast or tea, but that's what he would have in the bedroom. He looked at me like I was crazy, but he good to his word, he moved the bed around. And after that, I never had a problem. I never had anybody come to me again. That was what he wanted to say to me. It was just a crazy little message. He just didn't simply like the way he had the furniture. The kind of thing that often happens to me. I'll get a message and I just don't really understand it because I don't really know somebody, or I don't, I might not know somebody that they know, and it doesn't make sense to me.
Some messages are those of much needed closure. Messages of love.
My son was playing hockey, and we had this phenomenal coach. He was a fabulous coach. I didn't really know a lot about him other than he was married. He had a son and a daughter. We'd all go over to his house. He'd have people over, and there was always this nagging feeling that somebody was there with a message. And I just didn't understand it because it was very strange to me. It was about a diary. She kept telling me when I would try to sleep at night that she needed me to tell him about this diary. And so I saw her bedroom. I saw where she had put the diary, and these are the visions that I'm getting when I'm going to sleep. It had everything that he would need to know about, I guess, her death. And what was really sad was his daughter had committed suicide, which I had no knowledge of that. And he told me about his daughter's suicide, and I didn't know how to tell him that now I understand what the message is. And so finally, when he was telling me, I said, I have to tell you something. I have a message for you. And I told him the message, and he started crying, and he said, how do you know about the diary? Nobody but her mom and I know about the diary. She was a teenager. She had a lot of issues. She had a struggle with her mom, and that's really what it was about. It was about her mom. This diary was hidden, and there's one of two places she would hide the diary, and she wanted for him to get the diary so he could read it and then understand, because he was very lost and very sad about his daughter. The mother had taken the diary, and I said, well, it's because there was things in it about the mom, in it, not in a good way, and probably she was having a very hard time processing that, right? She loved you, and she really wants to let you know that, and that was the message that she had for you. Often when people commit suicide, we blame ourselves. We should have seen the signs or all of that, and we really, it's really not our fault. And I think that's really what she wanted to let him know. A year later, I was teaching at a college, and one of my students just chatting, and turns out she actually played in Mississauga, and she was around the same age that his daughter would be. So I said to her, you don't happen to know, and I gave her name. We started sobbing. She was very close to this girl. He told me about the mom and about the dad and the situation. But it just kind of, I guess, verified sort of what was said to me through the spirit world. When these kinds of things happen, it's really nice to have that validation or the verification of it. And it's one of those things that people have a hard time coming to grips with. And I was very happy to be able to give him some closure, some sense of, happiness, because he really thought it was him.
Not all of the spirits that Susan encountered have messages. Some just want to be known. When she moved into a home with her family, those spirits took no time doing so.
So my husband and I and our children, he has 2 and I have 2, we moved into the Carruthers house, I believe it was May of 2007. And the funny thing about that house was we had been driving by it a number of times, looking at it and just checking out the neighborhood. And it was one of those places that I'm not really a fan of the style of the house, but there was something about it that really attracted my attention. And the Carruthers house, we actually got a really great deal on it, or so I thought. Before we moved in, when we were looking at it, we didn't actually walk in the front door. We came in through the backyard because the people who owned the house were still living. They were still in the house. And so they just wanted a few more minutes to collect themselves before they left. And it was beautiful. When we were moving in, the people who were moving out, they were not in a good place. And they were very late in getting all their furnishings out. So we were waiting till about, I think it was like 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock at night. And as my husband, and he never told me this until after, that the teenage daughter who was passing him as we were coming and they were going, she said, enjoy the ghosts. So when we went in, I never really noticed, there was no feeling, I didn't think that there was anything unusual about the house at all. It was lovely. It was nicely decorated. It needed a few maybe tweaks for me, and so we loved it. things started happening right away when we moved in. So there was no grace period. It was just right away that things started happening. Well, lights flickered, and we would think something like keys would be moved, or just little weird thing, little toys or things like that. And this, with 4 kids in the house, you don't really think anything of it. But when they're not always there and they're still happening, you just kind of go, oh, that's kind of strange.
These weird things turned into fear when entering the basement.
It's the feeling. There's a feeling you get that it's kind of a heaviness, that there's something there or somebody there, and you feel somebody watching you or following you in the house. It's kind of unnerving, I think, even though I know that I see things and I hear things and I get messages. It still freaks me out, actually. So the presence in the basement, it wasn't very pleasant. It was very heavy, very angry. I felt very afraid of it. It was not of this earth, what I saw. It was a dark shadow. It was a dark shadow in the corner, at the very far corner of the house, and I could feel red eyes. Now, did I see them? I'm not sure. It could have been in my mind, but I felt like red eyes were staring at me, and it didn't feel human. But it was a very uncomfortable feeling. I guess it was the back corner where the furnace was, and it was like a workshop, and so it was kind of dirty and desolate. There was also kind of like wood bars across the window, so it made it even more ominous. So it was really dark and creepy. We were in the house about a month, and we were sitting in the family room watching TV, and we were talking about ice cream, which I had just bought. So we had ice cream in the freezer, which was down in the basement. And I said to him, oh, why don't you go get us some ice cream? And he said, no, why don't you go get it? So we're going back and forth like that. At some point I looked at him because he was saying it in a weird way, and I said, oh, so you know about the downstairs basement and that creepy feeling in the back corner with the red eyes staring at you? And he looked at me and he said, oh yeah.
Susan had a psychic come in on multiple occasions to assist her with the happenings.
So that's basically how I dealt with it, because I did have a psychic come, and she tried to move the presence on. So I remember going down there, and as I turned to walk away, I could feel it right on my back. And I said to her, you know what? I think you need to stop, because I think that it's just better if we leave it alone and allow it to coexist with us. And it was very much attached to the land, found, I guess, solace in the corner of our creepy basement.
So they left it alone, and the red eyes remained in the house, contained in its creepy corner of the basement, unless someone wanted ice cream. Now they did try and renovate and brighten the area, but the feeling of the eyes never did leave. After being in the house for a while, things slowly began to reveal themselves. Having 4 kids would account for a lot of activity, but they weren't the only things that were active.
I did feel that when I was in the kitchen or when I was upstairs, I would see things like shadows going out the front door. And I would always think, maybe the kids went out the front door, or my husband went out the front door. And then I started realizing it wasn't them, it was something else. It was almost like there was people going through the house from the spirit world. So I did a little recon on the area and what the area was about and who lived in the area and if anybody had died in the house and that kind of thing. And of course, there's a few neighbors who had been there forever, and they're like, oh no, nobody ever died in your house. What I discovered, I should say, or unearthed, was that the land we were on was First Nations land, like most land is, right? And there was probably a natural path where with First Nations people, they were very, they would move from one location to another, depending on the season, depending on where the food was and that kind of thing. And when the settlers came, they started moving the First Nations people, like they started carving out areas for them to live. When people were being colonized, when settlers were coming into Canada, they were bringing different diseases and that kind of thing, basically giving these diseases to the First Nations people. And of course, it really depleted the numbers just because of the illnesses that the First Nations people would get. You know, and in covering that, it makes sense that there was, there was probably a lot of fear and sadness and a lot of, things that were not really right. And so that's really the land that we were living on. Our house, apparently when I brought a psychic in, she said there's people here who are from that time who have not crossed over, have not leaving.
But one night, someone wandered from this well-traveled path.
So one night when I was sleeping, again, it was probably about 3 a.m, I saw, what I thought was my son in the doorway of our bedroom. Hayden, we thought, was at the front, was at the doorway. And then I saw him walk across the foot, towards my side. And he walked over and I moved over to let him get in. And then there was no Hayden. My son wasn't there. And I thought, where did he go? I got up and I walked to his bedroom and he was sound asleep. Like there was no question that it wasn't him because he was sound asleep and he doesn't fall asleep that quickly. The next morning when I woke up and we were getting coffee, my husband asked me, he said, "Oh, what time did Hayden come into the bedroom last night to sleep with us?" And I said, I looked at him and I said, it wasn't Hayden. It's the other little boy who's in the house. The one that's not of this world. And my husband looked at me and he went, "Oh." And you know what? I think my son Hayden also saw him because he would hear footsteps coming into his room. He would ask me, "Mom, I thought you came into the room last night, but I didn't see you. Were you in my room?" And just things like that. There was often times we would see or feel the presence of a little boy, and not often did you get a glimpse of him. But when I had the psychic come in, she actually talked to him and got him to go to the light. And so she said that whoever was in the basement was holding him back. The house had what I would describe as a portal. And so you never knew who was coming in or what you were going to get.
A spirit portal is any person, place, or object that acts as a channel for unrelated spiritual beings to travel to and from this physical realm we know as Earth.
Generally, it was just a feeling you would feel like when you would go down into the basement, there was something, like there was some energy there. And it was confirmed when I had the psychic. She said there's a portal, and she showed me where the portal was, and she used her divining rods, and they were going crazy. And she said, this is a very active portal.
Divining or dowsing rods have been used for centuries by people that are trying to tap into energy emitted by certain objects, and they're often used in paranormal investigations.
And she couldn't close it. She said, "You need we need probably a group of women, people who can, psychics who can come in and form a circle and close this down," because she said it's just too powerful, and it's probably been here for a while. So that's kind of, it's nice when somebody can confirm that, okay, it is a portal. Why did I think that? I don't know. I don't really know why I thought that it was, but I didn't tell her there's a portal. She said, "You have a portal."
Susan had further confirmation of this portal.
My stepdaughter was staying with us. She was living with us for a couple months, and we had changed the downstairs family room into her bedroom. And I thought she came home one night with her friend, because I could hear people chit-chatting down in the kitchen. And that's basically where the portal was. But it didn't occur to me that maybe it was somebody coming through the portal, because generally when somebody came through the portal, they just came through it. They would walk through it, not necessarily stop and have a conversation, right? And so I'm messaging her and asking her, are you downstairs? Did you come home? And so finally she messaged me back and said, no, I'm not home. And I went, oh my God, because then I started realizing I'm hearing children. And it's women with children. And they're not speaking, they're speaking in a different language, which I would say is probably First Nations, only because I know lots of people who are Indigenous. So that's exactly what it sounded like. And I realized they were walking through the house. They were just passing through. It would probably have been a normal thing that they would have come through this way. And so I felt a lot better, because at first it was really kind of scary. I thought somebody was in the house.
And then further validation.
One of the things that happened was my husband's mom took very ill, and so we brought her to our house, and of course we converted a different section of our downstairs for her to have a bedroom. And she was staying with us for about, I want to say 2 weeks, let's call it 2 weeks, and there were some really unusual things that were happening.
Because of her mother-in-law's medical condition, Susan bought a monitor so she could watch over.
So my girlfriend said, get a camera, get one of those cameras that you can go to Costco and pick up and just put it inside, and then you can watch it on your phone. And then one night, again, I don't really sleep a lot at night. It was about 2 a.m, and I'm up all night because I really don't think I slept for the whole 5 months that she was with us. And so I've got the camera up, situated, so you can see down the hallway, you can see the living room, the dining room, so the whole main floor almost you can see with this camera. And so I turn it on because I can hear her walking around, and I want to make sure she's okay. So I turn on the camera. This is the first time I've now turned on this camera at night. And all I can see is it looks like it's a rainstorm of orbs in my living room and dining room. So, and of course, it's also shining down towards where the portal is, right? Because it's capturing all that area. So all of a sudden, I see this white light. This is no piece of dust. It literally zooms past the camera. It does a 360. It turns around and it comes right up to the camera, and it starts like nodding back and forth, like it's looking at me. And it's acknowledging me. And I threw my phone. I went, oh my God, this, whatever that is, could see me. It's like, it scared me. I turned up the phone back on and went, oh my God. And it was crazy what I was watching. And dust doesn't go upside down and from floor to ceiling. I mean, it looked like there was 50 to 100 orbs at any given time. And I have to tell you, it was kind of frightening, because now I'm realizing there's a heck of a lot more activity in my house than I even realized. So now it's like, yeah, time to sell. So the last weekend that we were at the house in Carruthers, I was very relieved actually that we were moving out. I have a friend who's a paranormal investigator, and he actually came in to do an investigation in the house. The things that he was capturing were so unbelievable. And so he was saying to me, like, there's some really unusual, like, heat signatures of people laying on my son's bed and sitting up and then disappearing. He was asking questions. They were saying things like, they said my son's name. They even got, that's the portal. Well, time to move on. And that's kind of how we ended our experience with that house. It's just that connectivity and genetics that I guess, like, we have it in our history and in our genes or whatever. And so often my relatives have told me that they also are a bit psychic as well. So, I'm very sensitive to what's happening, and often I can even feel what people are feeling, and I kind of say the right things at the right times for people. And, it's very important, I think, for us to be connected, especially now with COVID and how people have been so, torn away from being connected and having a connectivity to somebody. So And I was really happy to say that the house we moved into is so quiet, except today, and the light seems to be flickering, probably because my mom's here. And that's the kind of experience that I get when I'm saying something or I'm doing something and somebody wants my attention. They will do something like touch my hair or turn a light on or off.
Well, I'm just sitting and watching it, so I believe you.
Throughout this interview, I watched the lights in the hallway turn on and off. That was a message from me. Someone was trying to get my attention for a very specific reason. And I believe they used Susan to get to me. So this is for you, Clarkson, wherever you are. Special thanks goes to Susan for sharing her story. If you have a sec, please subscribe, rate, and review us wherever you listen to your podcasts. It would mean a lot to us. Story submissions can be sent to hello.geist.podcast@gmail.com. Geist is written and directed by Danielle Matar. Original score and sounds by Beau Jensen. Episode mixed and mastered by Esker. Geist logo is by Jake Carruthers. Follow us on all social media platforms at Geist_podcast. Thank you so much for listening. And until next time, sleep tight.